the nose or through the mouth or through the conjunctiva. There's nothing beyond. You don't have any other transmission routes. If that be the case, why do you have to wear this complicated PPE and then make yourself uncomfortable? I would rather prefer to rename it as PTE, that is the personal torture equipment. It is not the personal protection equipment. It is a personal torture equipment. This is what I will say. It's just because, see, as a surgeon, if I have to operate on a patient, I should feel absolutely comfortable, both mentally and physically.
Very true.
If I am under strain, if I am under pressure, if I have a noose around my neck, how do you think I can operate on a patient? That's just impossible. So the same thing, these views I did share with Dr. Thomas Burgess yesterday. He just burst into laughter. He just started laughing. When I asked him, sir, what is your opinion about this PPE business? He just started laughing. He said, it's all humbug. It is all a hype. This is what he said. What he said was, all you need is, you need a mask, an N95 mask, and to protect your N95 mask and to avoid some additional leakage or something like that, you can wear an additional surgical mask on top, and then you can wear your spectacles, a close-fitting spectacles and a visor, or you can wear your goggles, but then goggles can always cause fogging. So it is up to you to use something to protect your eyes. And then, of course, you cover your head. That's more than sufficient. And have a impermeable, an overall, which will protect you, in which you are comfortable. This is what he said. This is exactly the same thing which the pulmonologist in the Idiki Government Hospital, who is heading the division where the COVID patients are being treated. This is exactly what he agreed with me on. But the point is, now I asked him, why aren't you implementing this in the government hospitals? So you know what he said? See, doctor, this is a government setup and we have our limitations. It's a big business, as you can see. It's a very big business. So all the PPE production companies, they've come out with new proposals, this, that, and the government is just falling for it. That's it. And they yield to a lot of pressure. So it's for us to formulate our own strategies based on the common sense which we have, and then move ahead accordingly. This is what I've got to say as a preface, and over to George Paul, sir, for his brief introduction, and then we'll proceed. George Paul, sir?
George is not there. I think Eban, I think you better start, George.
Yeah. So we'll right now. Yeah. Well, good evening, friends, and dear buddies, or whatever I may call it. First of all, as a disclaimer, let me just mention you, as you are seeing me today, it's written, my name is written as S. Mahendra Perumal. I'll tell you that is what happened today, because Dr. Mahendra Perumal is supposed to be hosting today, and due to some network issues, he could not host, and he had sent me his mail ID, and so I've logged in with this ID. So so I'm actually Dr. Eban Thomas myself from yesterday today, and going to be also. And even though it's listed here as Dr. Mahendra Perumal, he'll be talking today. So today's session, actually, we have two main things to be talked about. We're going to discuss about the professional protection equipments, under which we'll have a brief elaborate discussion on the mask and the different types. Then we'll be talking a little bit about the what you call the face shield, and of course the different types of gloves what we are supposed to use. Then of course Dr. Perumal is going to speak about the various type of gowns and the settings and the various armamentariums or the various gowns types what is required in the current scenario. So before I start with, we had the admins we had actually discussed yesterday, and we thought we'll start off with a brief just winding up of yesterday's discussion. Something let me just share my screen as part of that. Well, so dear friends, yesterday we had a long meeting. In fact, we had talked about more than 1.5 hours, and a quick review about what I talked about yesterday. So yesterday, actually, I mentioned about various parts of various matters pertaining to fumigation and fogging. Under that, actually, we discussed about what is fumigation and what is fogging. is the basic difference between these two? In fumigation, where we use different chemical agents and we bring about using the machine gas, and which is actually diffuses into the operating room and brings about disinfection. Fogging is again another similar method in which the particles are thrown out from the machine in the form of aerosol. That's a basic difference, and we also saw about this. Now let us conclude about that fumigation. What's the take-home message yesterday? What we had from the discussions? Just a minute, please. Yeah. So what's the take-home message? Number one is basically we have already decided that the fumigation, all of us agree that fumigation and fogging is a very good effective tool in terms of disinfecting the operatory, of course. But then the things what we actually got into a difference of opinion was regarding the practicality, because in the current scenario we talked about no more using about formaldehyde or formalin for disinfection due to various reasons regarding its carcinogenicity and the time period what is required. And since implementation in the availability of newer products, we thought about even implementing the process of fogging or fumigation with even that also takes a minimum of 90 minutes time. So considering the practicality of implementing in your practice, think about whether you need this. That's again one message for you. Then the third part is, it's not at all a mandatory requirement as far as the dental clinic is concerned, fumigation or fogging, but definitely for those who want to do, they can do, whether if they are able to do it within the so-called 90 minutes break in between patient, or maybe during the lunch break time, we can have one round of fumigation with the currently available materials. And one should remember that fumigation or fogging is not a substitute to your regular practical protocols or the basic aseptic protocols. And you should also consider, while choosing a material or an element, you should consider about the risk versus benefit. There are agents which is actually going to give rise a lot of risk in terms of irritation, carcinogenicity, irritation changes and all that. So when you choose a material, whether it's for fogging or fumigation, based on your type of practice, if you can accommodate into that 90-minute slot, or if you can do in your lunch break time, well, you are very welcome, you can do that. But always definitely think about the risk and the benefits regarding that. But then everything, the bottom line is you should always adhere to standard basic protocol that has to be there. So anything and everything has to be in addition to the standard basic protocol. This is what I have to tell about the basic take-home message after yesterday's discussion about the fumigation and fogging. Now let's move on to today's my topic. Before that, these were the agents also which was actually put up yesterday. We had actually ruled out the use of formaldehyde. So we had actually brought these materials. This is basically actually based on these two materials are actually currently a combination of hydrogen peroxide and silver nitrate. Hydrogen peroxide and silver nitrate combination. These are two commercially available products. Envodil, which is costing you 2,500 rupees per 5 liter. You can have another one from EcoShield from Johnson & Johnson, which is costing you 650 rupees per liter. And now we have also another one agent which is called as organic product, which is actually nothing but third generation quaternary ammonium compounds. This basically thought to be more. Sorry, people are coming in. Well, now these the D2125 material is actually supposed to be a material which is considered to be much more safer in terms of no carcinogenicity, no irritation, less residues, faster onset and faster finishing the procedure. So D125 was supposed to be or to be thought about one of the good materials as we saw yesterday. Now again, a lot of disturbance from the crowd. People, kindly put your mic off, please. People have joined now. Kindly put your mic off. Yeah, that's it. Yes, so that is about the various products yesterday we discussed about, because we have actually totally thrown out formaldehyde. And if at all, if anyone would like to use, they can use this combination of hydrogen peroxide and silver nitrate. I've given you two components available in the market and the cost and the pricing also. And an economical, another one product in the D125, which is from MicroShield, it's a Microgen company. That's again a quaternary amount compound. Those who want to use can use that. The advantage is all these things will get over in another 60 to 90 minutes. So once you start, then the clinic is roomed, or the operatory room is walled off and sealed off nicely, and then the procedure gets over in 60 to 90 minutes. The advantage of these products. So for those who would like to use it, and if they have that leisure of spacing appointment between patients as 90 minutes, they can very well adopt these measures, but not at all a mandatory. And the other agent which we talked about was about chlorine dioxide. Chlorine dioxide is available in various forms. It's available as sachet also in the nowadays. It's a commercial preparation, Rapigi. Now the safety mechanism and things like that, it's not at all totally foolproof. It's a release of chlorine gas. It's very cheap also. One sachet will cost you in the range of 225 rupees. So for one use, one sachet in 250 ml of water in a closed bowl, you keep it, and then once you open up, there's a lot of fumes coming out, the chlorine dioxide vapor that can be kept in the room, and then slowly that will actually spread and diffuse into the room and bring about disinfection. It's not at all recommended ideally to be used when the patient is working as part of overnight use or something like that. We can use that. So these are the various products which is been shown to you all for those who are interested in the process of doing fumigation in clinic and your practice. Well, now today's topic, as far as PP is concerned, now I'm supposed to speak to you about the surgical mask and, of course, the respirators. We have heard these terms, two terms, very frequently with varying degrees of, and we don't know what exactly, many people doesn't know what exactly a mask is and a respirator. So we'll take this topic and we'll discuss about what are the queries, what are the matters pertaining to your doubt regarding this particular topic. Now, let's start with a respirator. Respirator is nothing but anything, an apparatus which actually protects one from the exposure to all airborne particles, whether it's a bacterial or virus or any other biological. That's one thing what you should understand. A respirator protects you from or exposes for any exposure to any sort of airborne particles in the form of aerosols, either from bacteria, virus, or biological. It has got a nice seal which actually fits tight to your face. That's about your respirator. I'll come to that later. Whereas your regular surgical mask is acting as a barrier. It is just a barrier and actually prevents the splashes or the droplets and from the person who's wearing it. So it doesn't actually prevent much from the patient's mouth coming this side. So it doesn't have much of a major protection against aerosol. The main content or the intention of wearing this surgical mask is to prevent the spread of droplets and spit or something from the person who's wearing it. Of course, it does have some sort of protection from the outside, also not that, but the main intention for a surgical mask is for preventing the spread of all these splashes and droplets from the person who's wearing it. So that's the difference between these two. So depending upon the situation, you have to decide what sort of a mask has to be used when. Now, this is two different masks. When I talk about this is a respirator wherein which you can see all around nice tight seal, okay, keeping that area very well where the outside airborne infections or the aerosol do not penetrate inside. Whereas you can see a surgical mask here with a lot of empty spaces here, there, out here. All these are potential areas wherein which airborne infections can go through. Even though this particular area is capable of a filtration as good as or lesser than that, but the good filtration rate is there. But then all these areas where this is loose is actually open to airborne infection. The protection what is offered by a respirator and a surgical mask is totally different. A respirator offers you 0.3 microns of filtration, 0.3 microns of filtration, whereas a surgical mask offers you 3 microns of filtration. That's a basic difference if you talk about in terms of filtration, in addition to lack of security from the airborne infection. So filtration power of a surgical mask is 3 microns, and your N95 is 0.3 microns. So it's almost 10 times better in terms of filtration, your N95 or mask or something like that. Now, let us move on to a little bit more other part. Basic parts of basic things. So you might be hearing about 2-ply, 3-ply, 1-ply. You don't know what it is. All these traders, they come and list out all these. We should understand what exactly it means. Basically, the mask comprises of two layers of non-woven fabric with a center layer of the so-called filter. So the center layer is actually which is contributing the filter. It consists of a melt-blown fabric actually nicely interlaced and actually acts as a nice barrier or a filter. So the center one, as said, doesn't have any strength. So it has to be always laminated between two layers. So you have an outer fluid repellent polypropylene layer and the inner one which is actually to take up the moisture. This is the basic components of your so-called mask. When you talk about 2-ply or 3-ply, in between, sometimes if it's used the intermediate filter layer, if it's comprising of a woven material, usually it's all non-woven. So the number of yarns it's taken to knit the thread, that actually is actually a measure of yours. So the more number of yarns taken to twist a thread, that means it's more efficient in terms of filtration. So 3-ply among the surgical mask would be the best in terms of surgical mask category to offer using. And you should realize now all these non-woven polypropylene are the materials which is actually the mask is made up of. It's got, I told you, outer and inner layer with a center filter layer, which is actually the one which is giving you a filtration in the rate of 3 microns in surgical mask. Let me come to the other part now. Now, what are the tests for, when someone offers you mask, you should ask for certificate. In case if you have to ask a certificate, CITRA is a South Indian Trade and Textile and Research Authority. They are the ones actually who's actually officially designated by the government of India to test the quality of the fabrics and all those things, and to ascertain regarding the to certify regarding the specificity of those products. So the common test what they do for to test the efficiency of the gloves is, one is an air permeability test, the second one is a bacterial filtration efficiency test, and it's a splash resistance test. So basically in the splash resistance what they do, they just pass 2 ml of your synthetic blood in a high velocity within a short distance to that particular fabric, they keep it, and that 2 ml of the synthetic blood is given at a high velocity, and they check whether any part of the blood or the blood color or anything is passing the other side. If it doesn't pass, you mean that particular mask has passed the test. If there is any sort of permeability on the other side, then that mask is not at all good. That's how they certify. Similarly, the bacterial filtration also, they assess and check all those things. These are the basic tests what CITRA does to certify a mask. So in case you happen to ask the certificate, this is something what you have to remember. The two terminologies.
I have to just interrupt one second.
Yeah.
I have to suddenly attend the AOMSI webinar now. Pramod just called up. Fine. So I'll just quickly be there because we are having a winding up session tomorrow. So I'll just quickly be there and I'll come back.
Please carry on.
From the group
now. No problem.
I'll come back soon.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. Okay. Now, I want my friends to know about these two terminologies, NIOSH and OSHA. Now, why I'm telling you is because you might have come across various, now everyone is aware about various matters coming up in WhatsApp through social media and forwarding things like that. So many a times you would have come across this NIOSH and OSHA. Now, just nothing but two official authorities as far as the United America is concerned. And this is basically a National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health Work. So basically, this is actually a part of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, which brings about the guidelines across the globe regarding all those infection controls. So it's part of the research work wing of the CDC, and this is what actually brings up various studies and brings about formulations and guidelines. And OSHA is again a practical aspect as of this CDC also, but then they actually deal with occupational health and safety administration. So that's what OSHA. Now, why I'm telling you is you might have seen the NIOSH recommendations and OSHA recommendations in many of those guidelines. So just for you to understand what it is, nothing to worry about. They are actually a part of the international organization. They are part of people are coming, but they're part of those Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. But now, when you might have come across 2-3 numbers, when yesterday other day somebody had messaged me personally, so what is NRP, and that's why I just put this slide for information. You might, when you talk about these respirators, actually you come across different numbers, name and numbers. Name in the sense it will be designation by N, R, or P, whereas in the number wise you might have come across these numbers 95, 99, or 100. Now, what are these? Now, this N, when you talk about N is nothing but this letter denotes the ability of that material to withstand oil-based particulates, because all these masks are sort of filtration of various aerosol and things and various other chemicals or other materials or dust and everything like that. So depending upon its resistance to withstand oil-based particulates, it's classified as N, R, or P. Whereas the number, when you talk about 95, 99, 100, that shows the percentage of filtration that particular respirator is offering. So there's 95, 99, or 99. I'll come to that later. N means when you talk about N, it's actually that particular group of your mask is not resistant to oil-based particulates. Remember that. That's what we're talking about. When you talk about R, that means they are resistant to oil-based particulates. I mean, they can also filter a part of the aerosol, which is actually of oil-based origin. When you talk about P, they are totally oil-proof. They are very much resistant to oil. They can also, even if it's the oil-based aerosol, anything of that can get passed through. So in terms of safety-wise, as the number goes inside, the name goes, the filtration also improved. Basically, this maximum proof. Somebody had asked me about use of P-type mask in the group yesterday. Not at all required. We just need to have a N mask. And as far as the percentage is concerned, 95, 99, 90, and 100. These are the three numbers which usually come across in respirators. So when you talk about N95, that means 95% of the particulate matter is filtrated. 95% of the matter, whether it's a bacteria, microbe, or anything of that sort, is filtrated. And 99 means, N99 means basically it stands for 99% of the particulate matter, whereas N100 filters 99.97 of the particulate matter. That is basically what you should know about the name and number and the different parts or the details of your so-called respirators. Now let me just tell you how this mask functions in two ways. Actually, that brings about the filtration. That is also important for you all to understand why this can't be reused. Now, how tightly the material is held together. The filter is based upon non-woven or melt-blown fabric or whatever it is. It's very much tied together. So how closely they are held together is determined by the type of mechanism or filtration. Number one. Second, they do have a static electric charge. That is also another mechanism of filtering and disinfecting or the killing this so-called microbes. So these are the two mechanisms, one based on the tightness of the mask or the filter layer, the tightness of the meshwork which is formed. The second is an inbuilt static electric charge. These are the two mechanisms in which the mask filters these microorganisms. Now, somebody asked me yesterday about the size of the virus, coronavirus, and the filtration property of N95 mask. Now, N95 mask are the filters 0.3 microns. I mean, it can filter anything to a size of 0.3 microns. If you have noticed, the size of your virus, the coronavirus, ranges from 0.06 micron to 0.14 microns. It is much smaller than the filtration efficiency of N95 mask, but still why it is recommended. Once somebody had asked me in the group yesterday. I'll tell you the reason. Now, this virus particles of the size of 0.016 or the virus particles of corona size, they never move around in a straight line. They always, gets carried in the air and moves in something what we call it as a Brownian motion. They have this so-called, bombarding on each other and, a typical wavy type of motion from one end to the other. So they get entangled in the meshwork what is built up in the filter. That is one way, because they possess the so-called Brownian motion. All these viruses, even though the size is lesser than the filtration rate of the N95 mask, it gets, it gets filtered in the lattice or the meshwork of those things. The second thing, how this virus gets infiltrated is, a virus, it doesn't travel by itself. It is actually moving in the form of aerosol. It gets carried away either with a droplet or aerosol. An aerosol, an average size is about 8 to 10 microns. Now, if you have a N95 mask with 0.3 microns of the filtration and the average size of the aerosol is 8 to 10 microns, then naturally the filtration efficiency of your N95 is good enough to give an efficient filtration. That's how the reason. I hope that part is clear, even though why the virus size is smaller than the filtration efficiency, how this particular virus can be filtered with the 0.3 microns N95 mask. I hope that explains the mechanism. Well, you might also have come across these terminologies, filtering phase piece, FFPs. I've seen again so many doubts regarding what is FFP, what is FFP233. Now, this is nothing but now when you talk about N95, N99, N100, you should remember in mind, these are all actually brought about by the American standards. The American standard, the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Occupation and Health, such that all those institutes are the one which is bringing about this N95 or NCDs and things like that. Whereas this is actually brought about by a similar federation or constituted by the European standards. So the European standards, it's actually this FFP1, FFP2, all these are European standards. So if you compare an end-to-end N95 filtration efficiency, that is 95%. So FFP2 of the European standard is having a 94% of efficiency. So do not choose FFP1 for your present use now, because FFP1, the filtration is only 80%. So if you're using any mask other than NCDs or the N95 series, then you should go for FFP2 or FFP3. But P2 is good enough because that is equivalent to your N95 in terms of the filtration and the efficacy. Okay, this is our FFP2 mask looks like with 94% filtration efficiency. Well, you might have come across these two types also, about mask with valve and without valve. Again, N95 mask has got, or any of these series has with valve and without valve. The reason being, now this N95 mask is just taking in 0.3 micron size, it's quite difficult for some people to take in the air, and of course definitely to let out air. When the person exhales, the exhaled air is basically a passive process, where inhalation is an active process in which you're taking the air inside. It easily goes through with a little bit of effort. But exhalation, the passive mechanism, the air what comes out gets collected in the space between the mask and the mouth, and it has to pass through this particular filtration rate. So in some people, there might be a little stagnation, might be a little difficult to actively push this exhaled air outside, and there is a possible problem also. So in such people who are having respiratory problems or difficulty in lung and all those respiratory difficulties, you can recommend this valve, that is N95 mask with valve. So the advantage of this valve, the mask with valve, is it actually offers you a good protection in terms of inhalation. It actually gives a comfortable exhalation. But the problem is, if you are a carrier, along with the exhalation, your droplets and your respiratory and the virus will be coming out of the mask. So basically, if you're wearing N95 or any type of mask with valve, you'll be comfortable, but you'll be a potential threat to the neighboring people in case you are a carrier. So remember that. So this is at the compromising safety in terms of things. So this has got a outweigh exhalation comfortable, but risk in the of contamination towards outside. Now, you might have heard about KN95 and N95. This is nothing to worry about. This is again another, now we have seen American standards. We have seen FFP2 as the European standard. This is nothing but the Chinese standards. The KN95 is equal to the American N95. Okay, so a KN95 also is good enough if you have. But these are all advanced type of masks. If somebody put the photograph, not at all required. These are all for those harmful chemicals, painting industries, poisonous gas and all that. You don't need actually, it definitely offers more amount of filtration, but you don't need all those to be taken inside. People are coming inside in between. That's why, sorry for the interruption in between. Rukawat ke liye khed hai, our all-time favorite dialogue in Doordarshan. Well, now when you talk about mask, when you select mask, you should be thinking about the 4 Fs. Now, what are the 4 Fs? One is about filtration, depending upon the your choice, what is the purpose of that. You should keep these 4 Fs in mind. What's this filtration? Now, whether you want a surgical or a respirator, depending upon the area where you're working in, what type of a filtration you want. You want the microbial filtration as to a small size of 0.3, definitely respirator is a choice. You don't have any problem of any bacterial or any sort of microbial environment, well, definitely you can go for a surgical. So choices, basically number one, first step is based on that. The second one is based on the fluid resistance, whether you're coming in from your working environment is associated with any sort of aerosol production, then you have to go in for something which is actually creating splatter, and as well as something which is more fluid resistant. And of course, definitely, if there is microbes associated, you will have to go for a respirator to give a more effective protection. Features with elastics or without elastics. Again, with ties or with, to my opinion, any mask, surgical mask with ties is most efficient than the one with elastic. The one with elastics is actually considered as ASTM type 1 because it's actually having much amount of elasticity. It doesn't actually give you a tight seal here. Now, even when so the mask with ties would be a better option than the elastic option. So that's something I'm talking about the surgical mask, not about the respirator. If you're talking about surgical mask, if your choices should be with ties, would be the best one if you can get it. So then this advantage of that. And I would recommend a tie like this. Now you've got the lower limb. It's better if you can tie like this upwards. So advantage is you get the seal somewhat better in the neck region or the chin region. Now the first thing goes up behind your occiput here, and the other one, instead of the regular one what you see here, if you can take this thread upwards, sorry. So if you can take this thread upwards out here and tie it up along your vertex there, then you're getting a little bit better seal in the neck area, even though if it's a surgical mask. See, this is what I'm talking about. There's lack of seal here, and that's why surgical mask is always considered as a potential risk to airborne infections. Then, of course, the fourth step, what you have to think about is the fit of this. It should have a nice proper fit around the nose and should completely cover that area and the mouth adequate. So these are the 4 F what you should keep in mind as far as a mask selection is concerned. Well, I'm not. Now since we have discussed the type of mask, I've explained to you what is the differences in the N series. I've explained to you what are the differences in the 95, 99, and 100 series. I've also explained the difference between the basic difference in the surgical mask and your what we call the respirator, and also explained about the reasons or advantages of the mask with valves and without valves. I've also shown you equivalent or comparative products as per the European standards and the Chinese standards. So this, now with that information, now we have actually based on, now let us come to how you should check for the seal of the mask. You're talking about your, so I'm talking about respirators in this category, not about the regular surgical mask, because in that you can't actually have a seal or check. So in a respirator, what are the things you should look for, how to look for a seal check? Now once you wear it, now you can hold your mask like this with the friend and just, okay, hold it like this and just try to exhale. Now when you exhale, if you feel there is a air exit through the thing outside for the margins, that means that is not adequately fit enough. Okay, now actually ideally and properly fitted N95 mask, the moment you start to exhale like a test, you can feel this part bloating up. You can feel the outer part of the N95 mask slightly bloating up. Okay, that should be an ideal fit. So rather than the air escaping from all sides, that means the fit is not correct. Okay, another one test is try to inhale. Now when you inhale air, this front part which is actually bloated earlier should actually just get sucked inside. Now, if you feel that it's not working, if there's easy entry of the air inside, then there's a possible entry of air from these areas which is supposed to be sealed. So when you take or inhale air, if you feel it's too easy, there's no sort of any vacuum created here, where there's no sort of any collapsing of the dome of the N95 mask, you should suspect there's a no adequate seal. Well, now these two things, if there is not positive, that means your mask is not fitting properly. In such cases, you have to properly adjust. You have to adjust your sort of clip, the aluminum clip, the nasal clip, whatever it is, and check the seal once again. Now, when you take inhaled air, if you feel the air escaping and you can feel it on your cheeks, or you can feel the air on your eyes and this thing like that, means it is actually leaking out from the so-called sealed N95. So it's not actually giving you the right amount of seal. So that is how you check for a N95 mask. So always, if you have any of these problems after wearing, so adjust your nose clips, make sure everything's kept properly, make sure the elastic is tied properly. Again, check for the your sort of seal of the mask. I'm not talking about the fit of the mask. I'm talking about the seal. Basically, at the root or nose out here and the chin out here, plus the surrounding areas should be having adequate seal. Otherwise, there is no point in spending so much for a mask and wearing. If you have the margins loose, you are again prone for entry of these microbes and giving rise to airborne infections. And in the present case, you will be gifted with the corona if you do so. So just be a little bit careful about that. So if you have any of these problems, remember, do not use that. Either change other thing or just adjust the mask accordingly. Now, how do you put it? Now, the thing is now that you have fellow, elastics on the other side. So you hold it like that and keep it first on your face, and then you put the first one. Okay, the upper one, you put it around behind your thing. Put the top strap over the head. Okay, then after that, with your hand supporting here itself, put the lower strap and let it go outside, outwards and downwards. So this is how you have to put. So all through, you'll be supporting your N95 mask with your forehand here, and the upper strap has to be put first, and then followed by your lower strap. And then, of course, you're checking after putting these straps, you're checking for the fit, like what I told you earlier, and the seal. And behind area, make sure it is coming as two separate areas. It should never cross over. That is what the authors or the so-called proposers say. The behind part never cross over. This should be the way out is. The upper one should confine to the upper part, and the lower one should go behind the neck out here. That is an ideal way of putting your mask and how it has to be retake. Well, again, I told you that nose clip area has to be contoured to the correct size and shape. Now, how to remove that? First, remove without front part is totally contaminated, exposed. So you should only touch the straps from behind. So the top strap, remove it. Okay. Then without touching the exterior, then you remove the lower strap also, and it has to be either discarded or it has to be kept in a way that I'm going to explain later. If you want to dispose it, you should not touch anywhere on the exposed area of the N95 mask, because that is being contaminated. They are filled with microbes. So that's how you wear, and that's how you check for the seal, and that's how you discard without touching the front areas. Touch and remove the first and the second trap, and then you can throw it if you are discarding it. Otherwise, I'll tell you how to put it out, use it also. If you want to prolong the usage, I'll be telling you later. Now we have actually discussed about the N95 mask, how to wear and how to do all this. Now let us talk about situations where most of us are concerned. How can you prolong the usage, or how can you extend the usage of the N95 mask. Of course, I know it's very costly nowadays. You get that 195, but Indian stuffs are also being available in the market for the rate of 100, 110. I don't know how the quality of that, but then with such costly materials available, you would always love to have materials or methods to prolong the usage of this. Now, let me come across, I've just come across this literature just 2 days back. This is a propagated or a recommended prolonging the use of respirators. Ideally, all these respirators has to be discarded and disposed. Considering the lack of availability, they have actually come out with a formula in which the N9 can be prolonged usage during the various methods. It's actually recommended by National Institute of Occupation and Safety Health. So this basic NIS, I told you the American CDC connected research wing of the CDC is come out with these guidelines. First technique, what they say is the use of 30% hydrogen peroxide. 30% hydrogen peroxide can be used as a vaporized portion, but you need the problem with that is you need sophisticated equipments like this, in which 30% hydrogen peroxide is created and in the vaporous form, and you can put in a cabinet and you can keep this there. That is the most advantageous method without efficiency and the structural properties also. Now, any method what we try to adopt to prolong the use should not have any bacterial or the virus filtration, should not have any physical damage on the mask, and should always be able to maintain the architecture also. The second method what they have suggested is the use of ultraviolet radiation. So UV light radiation in the range of 250 to 350 nanometers can be used for your so-called N95 mask disinfection. That's one suggestion or the recommendation by NIOSH. So if your clinic is equipped with the regular UV light chamber, most of the clinics do have. So if you have a clinical equipped with UV light chamber, if you can keep it for 5 to 10 minutes in that can be held made disinfectant recommendation of the NIOSH. And if you're using a UV light, maximum of 3 to 4 times one mask can be reused. That's the recommendation you find. So UV light irradiation, if you want to use the mask again, maximum 3 to 4 times. So beyond that, the structural properties of the mask deteriorates, the filtration property of the mask deteriorates. So that's again something second one. Then the third one, what is giving you more longevity is the use of moist heat using water heated in an oven, and you expose the steam for 15 to 30 minutes. The steam should not be more than 60 degrees centigrade. So in a microwave oven or your regular oven, you take a bowl of water, okay, and on top of that, you keep a filter or a stand, and you keep this thing, and you keep the temperature. So make sure that it should not go beyond 60 degrees centigrade. So once the 60 degrees centigrade, whatever steam comes, if you keep the mask exposed for a period of 15 to 30 minutes, you can use it again. That's what they have suggested as per one person is waiting. Okay. So that is one advantage of that is the one which is actually giving you least destruction in terms of the property, in terms of the structure. So they say it can be even used from the 3rd time to 20th time when this was tested. It retained, the N95 mask retained this property of bacterial filtration and other integrity and other properties also. So this is what study what they say, the NIOSH was suggested. So up to the 3rd time they tested, the 20th time also they tested. All these times, this particular mask had retained its all good properties with a minute deterioration, not at the cost of so much of any deterioration. That's something, one interesting finding what they have come out with. Furthermore, I would say, now if any of these are not available only, then they have recommended the use of microwave steam. Again, if you are using a 1100 watts microwave, and again bag there, you collect that regular bags in water wax, okay, and you fill it 60 ml of water and you heat it, and the steam also can be used for just 90 seconds. That's good enough. That's in microwave. That's the microwave generator steam for 90 seconds. Again, another one option. But that is all basically the quality of the mask is not as good of how you're using this 60 degrees centigrade steam. Well, again, they have also suggested use of liquid hydrogen peroxide. Okay, in that what they have done is 6% hydrogen peroxide. You immerse it in 30 minutes. Immersion. It sounds quite thing, but then that is one of the method what they have told. So 6% hydrogen peroxide solution. If you immerse the mask for 30 minutes without without actually destroying the properties of the filtration as well as other static electrical properties. So that's again one advantage of this. So these are the ways what in which the sorry, people are coming more. These are the methods of reusing as per the CDC guidelines or NIOSH guidelines. Okay, so this is the link. I'll give you the official link out here. I'll be putting this in the group also later for so each of you can actually go through the links and interpret yourself also. This is what the recommended the things. So what they have suggested is till the company or the manufacturer comes out and tells that this is not to be used. I repeat, till the company or the manufacturer of that particular respirator comes out with evidence or states that no, do not use this, till that time, they said this is a recommended protocol to reuse the mask. That's about reusing mask. But some things about things what you should remember is another one method of extension of use as far as how the aims of All India Institute of Medical Science they have actually proposed. The mask what you have used once, okay, you have removed how I told you the way. Don't touch the front areas. You're putting in a day one. After the day one, see, on the mask what you use, if it is not soiled at all, you can use it for that one particular full day. If it is not soiled with all those aerosols, things like that, if it's just extraction and simple procedures or consultations and aerosol using, but then not too much of soiling, then you can use it for that full day, what they're suggesting. So at the end of the day, you remove the mask and put in a brown bag like this, which is marked as day one. On the second day, you're using a new mask, okay, and end of the day, they are putting in the cover, okay, in the brown cover and keeping it as the day two. Same way, third day, you take a new mask, complete it, use it, put in a brown cover. Fourth day, again, you take another mask, complete it, and the end of the day, keep it one. So advantage on the fifth day, you can take this mask. So basically, that's basically on the studies which states that the longevity or the life of the virus is not more than 72 on cardboard paper. So that's again one of the reasons what they're suggesting. So 4 days of totally isolation will definitely make it. All India Institute of Medical Science have come out with the technique. So this way also you can use. So if you have 4 masks, you can use one mask. Somebody's talking. Somebody, Matthew. I request all the participants to put their mic on mute, please. I'm just trying to search who's talking between. Fine, that's all. So, well, this is again another method of, using the mask. So if you have 4 masks, okay, you can, each of them, they say, they say they can use 4 times. It can be turned into 4 times. So 20 days can be used with 4 masks. That's what the All India Institute of Medical Science have suggested. See, there's a conditions also. Your mask should not be soiled and too soggy with so much of blood or anything of that sort. Okay, so if it's not too soiled, if it's not too bloody or things like that, you can keep the mask like this, and like that, if you can continue doing that, every 4th day you take the new mask. So with 4 masks, you can run for 20 days. That's what the text that they are suggesting. Well, now coming to another one technique, again, whenever you're using your 3M mask, if you can use a regular 3-ply surgical mask on top of it, advantage of it maximum, the 3M mask will remain intact. Only the surgical mask, if at all requires, needs to be changed. So you can actually prolong the use of your N95 mask in that way also. Okay, by using a 3-ply mask over a thing. Now, all these things will have a face shield, mind you. All these things will have a protective face shield. So the main droplets or things is going to just come on top of that. The remaining one getting soiled is difficult. So if you wear your 3-ply mask, surgical mask over N95, that's again another way of prolonging this thing, usage of this thing. Well, now these things should not be tried to prolong the usage or to disinfect the respirator. Autoclaving is contraindicated. Dry heat of any form is contraindicated. Disinfection with your alcohol spray. No, don't do that. Washing with soap. Never do that. Microwave radiation. Your bleaching solution. Disinfectant alcohol wipes. ETO, ethylene oxide. So all these are contraindicated again by the Center for Disease Control, the CDC or the NIOSH. They have been told not to use any of this because this is going to, create compromise in the filtration property and the static electric property of the mask, or making them vulnerable to your microbial penetration. Well, let us now moving on to indication. Let me tell all aerosol anticipated, I mean you, or aerosol anticipated or generated procedures. In that particular case, you have to go for a N95 mask. Face shield goes without saying. Even for consultation, you have to wear the face shield. Okay. Now, whether you should go for a surgical mask, regular surgical 3-ply mask, or an N95 is what I'm talking about. So I repeat once again, all aerosol anticipated or any procedure which is generating aerosol, you have to wear your regular PPE plus this N95 mask. All other procedures where the surgeon, where you are doing simple extraction or maybe consultation, other than your face shield, a surgical mask is more than enough. Your front office staff who's actually managing the patients in the waiting room, who's going to talk and discuss about the payment, who's going to give appointment, those people again can be can be considered, and they should be wearing all this. So the person who cleans the floor, your laboratory operators who actually takes this the what do you call the instruments and goes inside, and who's wherever there's a possible chance of exposure splatter, all these people can be wearing or should be wearing a surgical mask. Your floor cleaning staff. Okay, so if you ask me if the floor cleaning staff, if even the splatter can create trouble for them, so it's not practically possible again, but then make them or teach them ways how to clean the floor without creating a splatter, but make sure they wear gloves. I'll come to the gloves later, and the regular surgical mask. So in such particular patients, such cases, you have to go for a surgical mask. I repeat once again, all aerosol or AGP procedures N95. All of the procedures where AGP is not indicated, where it's not expected, surgical mask. That's how you have to choose. And of course, face shield goes without saying. All these procedures has to be having a face shield on top. Now, while wearing N95 mask, there is always a learning curve because we are not used to wearing N95 mask, which is actually taking an overall tight seal all around. So inhalation, exhalation, all these actually will take some time for you to learn. So always before practicing on the patients, it's always better wear the N95 mask can use, because in some people it might be quite difficult, and I'm just warning you, because in some people, because of the difficulty in inhalation and the exhalation, they could be having a real problem, because when you exhale and the exhaled air doesn't go out of your mask, so there's all possibilities that the next round of inhalation you could be taking more of carbon dioxide, and then you could lead to a situation like hyperventilation. Now all these are situations which is possible likelihood. So it's always better to do some trials by wearing the N95 mask yourself. Be comfortable, try to know your breathing pattern, and all those things are must before straight away wearing onto the N95 and then taking a patient. Finally, patient will be having so much of time and difficulty in taking care of you. Suppose if you happen to collapse in front of the patient, doesn't look nice too. So always learn and practice the way how to wear the N95 mask. Let's move on to the gloves. Quickly, I'll finish it off. Gloves, basically, now there are different types. One is a latex glove, okay. The other one is a nitrile, and of course surgical gloves and utility gloves. These are the 4 types of gloves other than the polyvinyl gloves. I'm just talking about these 4. Latex is the one which is actually most comfortable to wear in terms of your dexterity, your feel, tactileness, and everything is best in the latex. And even the permeability, the resistance to microbial attack also depending upon the micron thickness, it's more in latex. Now, the disadvantage of latex is the possibility of an allergic reactions and the possibility of others associated latex-related injuries or the latex-related reactions. So that's why across the world, more and more people are using the nitrile gloves. Nitrile gloves advantage is basically it's a synthetic type of latex, and it's actually much more in terms of protection. The dexterity or the feel little less in the initial times. Once you learn with that, you also get master over it. And the advantage of nitrile gloves over the latex is it offers more amount of a chemical protection, which is not that very good in terms of latex gloves. So nitrile gloves would be the gloves of choice. Surgical gloves, in all surgical procedures, it's actually of a thick variety. And utility gloves is this what I'm talking about, what the staff should be wearing. Now, when and where to wear? Examination gloves should be worn whenever there is a contact with mucous membrane or otherwise potential or infective materials. When I talk about wherever you don't have a communication with the blood, whenever you examine the patient, like simple fillings or anything of that. Right now, let us stick to emergency treatments. So anywhere where you don't come across a direct contact with the blood, whether it's all scaling procedures or surgical procedures, definitely has to wear your surgical gloves. Why I'm telling you scaling surgical is because there is also possibility that the inflamed gums will actually create blood and you might come in contact. As of now, forget about scaling. It's not actually the need of the hour now. Just in general, talking about the usage of gloves. Examination gloves should be worn anywhere where they combat the mucous membrane or otherwise potentially inflammatory. Now, when I talk about OPIM or the otherwise potential infective material, what I'm talking about is the impression you have taken on the impression surface, contact with saliva. That's again the surface. That surface is also actually having trouble here. So now the next thing is surgical gloves. Any surgical procedure, you have to wear a surgical gloves, and especially when you are wearing, managing patients with infective diseases, it's advisable. It's advisable to go in for a double gloves if you are treating with any case with infected patients. If you're using a examination glove, it's always advisable to go for double glove. And when the staff is actually having using any area to clean and disinfect, they should be wearing utility gloves. I've told you what is utility, what is surgical, what is examination, what is nitrile, and what is latex. So this is where the indication on each type of glove should be coming. Examination glove for all type of procedures where no contact with blood. And double surgical gloves or not surgical procedures or wherever blood is come in contact. Double glove whenever you are suspecting any sort of infectious diseases, and utility gloves for all the staff when they carry or transport the instruments from the point of where you do the dental chair and the asepsis, sterilization, cleaning everywhere. Utility gloves, cleaning the floor or the wiping areas, the mopping areas, everywhere utility gloves has to be used. And gloves has to be disposed properly and adequately. So that's in brief about the presentation so far from my side. Now, any questions or anything like that, we'll take up at the end of this session after Dr. Perumal is going to speak about how the gloves to be worn and about the gowns and the other part and what the gown of choice, whether it's a coverall or other things. Now, Dr. Perumal is going to speak on that. Thank you for your patient listening. Over to you, Dr. Perumal.